Alright, for my book review, I chose to read Storms of My Grandchildren, The Truth About the Coming Climate Catastrophe and Our Last Chance to Save Humanity by Dr. James Hansen, published in 2009. Dr. Hansen has been working to bring attention to global warming since the 1980s, hence his nickname, the grandfather of climate change. He was a professor in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences at Columbia University and director of the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. In the preface of Storms of My Grandchildren, Hansen says, quote, "I did not want my grandchildren, someday in the future, to look back and say, Opa understood what was happening, but he did not make it clear. That resolve was needed. If it hadn't been for my grandchildren and my knowledge of what they would face, I would have stayed focused on the pure science and not persisted in pointing out its relevance to policy." End quote. This quote is the basis for the rest of Hansen's notable points in the book. He addresses climate issues, or chaos, as he explains it, on a political level. Greenwashing, which is basically environmental concern without action, has for far too long been politicians' response to the crisis, and the responses are ineffective. Government officials and Hansen's colleagues at NASA continually shut him down in fear of losing their own power. Years ago, Hansen made predictions that we are now seeing happen right in front of our eyes. And if it weren't for officials' selfish behavior and ignorance, we may not be in such a predicament. Hansen explains that on an international level, we need to cut back carbon dioxide emissions, lessen the use of plant coal emissions, and work on better forestry and agricultural practices that are more sustainable in the long run. James Hansen does a compelling job of laying out the facts and quote-unquote solutions in his first book, Storms of My Grandchildren. He is also successful in reaching people in a more emotional tone, beginning with the title of the book followed with multiple anecdotes throughout the book. Hansen hooks your emotions and then backs it up with his research and facts. I've always been a believer in climate change and the drastic effects it has and will continue to have on our planet, and that we must aggressively move forward with saving our Earth, as there is no planet B. Storms of My Grandchildren only heightened my feelings on the topic of climate change. It made me want to get more involved with activism and spreading to those around us that this must be an issue our policy makers pay more attention to and start to make promising policies that will begin to make a difference. I would recommend this book specifically to people of my generation that don't believe in climate change and or that don't see it as a pressing international issue. We are the future scientists, researchers, teachers, lobbyists, politicians, and mothers and fathers that the tremendous horrors of climate change will affect most if we do not act now.